We left off in our last video with the pavilions, and because of time constraints of 15 minutes on these videos, I wasn't able to get this last picture in, but just take a look at it now. This photo is of a band that's playing, but it's not playing in the pavilion, it's playing in the rear of the pavilion. This photo is looking south at the back of the pavilion, and you can see the support structure that held the old pavilion here. And this pavilion now held the concession stand. And if you look closely, you can actually see a couple people in there buying something from the concession stand. Okay, that finishes up with the pavilions. Let's go over to the park waterfront now. People looking at the waterfront today have no idea what it was like before. And these people walking here have no idea that, 50 years ago they would be walking on water, because a lot of landfill went into expanding that waterfront so that there wouldn't be such a steep hill. This is the hill I'm referring to. You can see it's much steeper than it is today, and of course there's not near as much land going out to the water. But if you look, there were several staircases going down to the waterfront. This picture here gives you a pretty good look at those staircases. And here it looks like there's a couple boys running up those stairs. And of course, steep hills are always a challenge for a boy, and so they had to place these signs up along trees at the top of the hill. And on the waterfront, you can see that the railing doesn't go all the way across. You see these little alcoves in the railing. And these alcoves were a place where a boat could tie up. There were steps going down from the sidewalk into the water, or you could go swimming from there as well. When I was growing up, there was a speedboat that gave rides, and they would board right there and disembark there. And it would take you up for a ride up along to the Blue Water Bridge and then come back and let you off. And it would appear from the sign on the tree that these speedboat rides were 50 cents. This picture is looking north from the waterworks. And you can see those oil tanks in the background there. This picture looks like it might have been taken in the 40s. You can see a couple sitting there looking out at the freighter going by. And it also looks like a woman there fishing. Looks like a lot of smoke for such a little boat. Notice at the top of the hill there's no sidewalk, it was just a path, and usually the path ran parallel to the tracks that went through the park. Here we see a ship, I think it's either the South American or the North American, so this picture would have been taken any place from 1913, 1914, that's when the ships were built. Notice in this postcard the lady in the white dress. And for this next postcard, she ran home and changed her dress because now it's pink. So you can see that the artists on these postcards took certain liberties. Here's an early picture of the waterfront. Notice that there's still those alcoves in there, but there's no railings around them. Matter of fact, there's no railing at all. It looks like this man and this woman are fishing here. Here's an even earlier postcard. Two things are notable here. One is the grassy green hill here has nothing at the bottom, no sidewalk or no railing or anything. And also there's no Blue Water Bridge there. In this photo here we see the two ships going up against the current and look like full steam. But also look at these ships, they also have the mast as well as the steam part of the ship. So they probably got out in the lake and they would put the sails up. This is a rather peaceful scene here. course, watching the ships go by is everybody's favorite pastime when they come to Pine Grove Park. Here we see a couple ladies with birds on their head or else hats. And here we see a black and white postcard, and then we see the same postcard that's colored. Note the fellows fishing off the docks behind the waterworks. It wasn't too unusual to be sitting there watching the ships go by, and all of a sudden this big freight train would come rumbling in behind you. But there was a train that came in on those tracks in Pine Grove Park that nobody minded seeing, because that was called the Freedom Train. The 1947 to 49 Freedom Train was proposed as a way to reawaken Americans to their taken-for-granted principles of liberty in the post-war years. The idea soon got the approval of President Truman, and everything else fell into place. Top Marines were selected to attend to the train and its famous documents. Those documents included the United States Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights, and toured 300 cities in all 48 states at the time. Alaska and Hawaii did not gain statehood until 1959. It was a pretty big deal, and even the comic books got involved. And Irving Berlin even wrote a special song for the Freedom Train entitled, "What Else? The Freedom Train." He wrote it over the course of a single Sunday afternoon, and within days Bing Crosby and the Andrews Sisters had recorded it and was ready for release by the time the train was ready to open to the public. Later, several other artists also recorded the song. I'll let you listen to a few bars of this song just to get an idea what it sounded like.
This song is a train song, it's a song about a train. Not the Edison Topeka, not the Chattanooga choo-choo, nor the one that leaves at midnight, or the state of Alabama. This song is the train song where the engineer is Uncle Sam. Here comes the Freedom Train, you'd better hurry down. Just like a Paul Revere coming into your hometown.
And people were pretty excited when it came into our hometown. Right here in Pine Grove Park it stopped. And here you can see the signage facing the St. Clair River saying freedom is everybody's job. This photo gives you a good idea what those alcoves looked like that had the steps going down into the water from the riverside. And you can see the fellows swimming here. It was a pretty big moment for Port Huron to think that that train that held all these important documents would stop at our little town. And the crowds, they were out there. They were long crowds. I remember going at night, and we stood over by the baseball field. The crowd was so long. In order to get to the tracks, it was a long line. And of course there was dignitaries that had speeches to give and everything during the afternoon. We had the average person would look on board, and we had the dignitaries looking on board, but it was just a good time and informative time. I didn't know what was going on. I really didn't appreciate it at the time. I couldn't remember if there was a charge to get on the train or not, but after I found this picture of the ticket booth, I could see where it looked like you were charged to get on. It looked like it was around $2 for adults, a discount for senior citizens and youth, and under 3 free of charge. Another event I'd like to share with you about Pine Grove Park involves this ship right here, the Put-in-Bay. The Put-in-Bay was named for that famous place where the Battle of Lake Erie was fought in the War of 1812. From 1911 to 1949, the Put-in-Bay transported passengers from Detroit to Sandusky. In 1949, the Put-in-Bay was transferred to a route that went from Detroit to Port Huron, which was a pretty big deal for Port Huron, as you can see by these pictures. Put-in-Bay was part of the Ashley and Dustin steamer line. It featured 4 decks and could hold over 3,000 people. And for the inaugural trip to Port Huron, the city pulled out all the stops. The city leaders were there to welcome them along with a band and folks just taking pictures. I was pretty excited to see this next picture from the Steamship Historical Society because the color picture gives you so much more of the flavor of the occasion, what's actually happening. You can see the color of the boat and the people on it, and of course even the band and the band uniforms. And so it's really a neat picture, even though there's some wording in the picture itself. It's a beautiful picture. Alright, let's look next at the Edison Memorial boulder. I've seen this many times as I was playing in the park. I never really paid much attention. I didn't know even what was written on the plaque until just when I was making this video. And here's kind of what it says. This boulder is placed in honor of Thomas Albert Edison on the playground of his youth and near the house in which he lived during the formative period of his life from 7 to 16 years of age, 1854 to 1863. I also thought you'd like to see how it got to the park from this farm. Wasn't an easy job. And this was the boulder being dedicated on October 19, 1929. Now here's something that wasn't around when I was growing up, a new tourist attraction for Pine Grove Park, the Huron lightship. Lightships were like floating lighthouses anchored in areas where it was too deep or expensive or impractical to construct a lighthouse. Lightships displayed a light at the top of the mast, and areas of fog also sounded a fog signal and radio beacon. The fog signals over the years consisted of bells or whistles, trumpets, sirens, horns. Foghorns were powered by steam in the early days and later by air compressors. The Huron lightship sounded her fog signal in a 3-second blast every 30 seconds and was known locally as OBO because of the familiar sound her horn made. E-O. I thought you'd enjoy that. This ship was built in 1920 and launched as a relief lightship for the Great Lakes. In 1935, she was transferred to the Corsica Shoals in Lake Huron, approximately 6 miles north of the Blue Water Bridge and 3 miles east of the Michigan shoreline, and it was renamed the Huron. She retired from active service in 1970. She was the last lightship on the Great Lakes. In 1971, the lightship was acquired by the city of Port Huron. On August 29, 1972, the lightship was placed in an earth embankment in Pine Grove Park, and it was open to visitors on July 13, 1974. When I was growing up, the Huron wasn't at this location, but there was something else important at this location, and that was the Westcott mail boats. The boats carried mail, laundry, and people to the ships passing by the St. Clair River. We'll close out this video with a home movie taken in 1942 at Pine Grove Park. There you see the waterworks looking south. You see that path running along the railroad tracks, and of course the railroad tracks. In the distance there you can see the Pavilion. And of course there was just a whole lot of trees in Pine Grove Park at that time. There's the boulder for Edison. And then as we get to the end of the park, you'll see where the cars were parking. Several cars, not the latest model cars. That one right there is my dad's Chevy. This shot here gives you the best picture you could ever get of the waterworks. You see the stack, you see the side of the building, smoke coming out, and you get a good idea of the railroad tracks there and that path, and the railings going down to the waterworks. Here's the Westcott boats getting ready for taking the mail out while getting in there, the pilot. And this scene here, he's taking one of the crew members or a pilot out to the ship to get on board. This concludes our video on Pine Grove Park, and in our next video we'll look at some other items you may be interested in going north.